Think about the last time you watched someone completely undeserving rise to power. That colleague who barely understands the work, but somehow got promoted. The CEO who makes terrible decisions, yet receives million-dollar bonuses. The politician who can barely string together coherent sentences, yet commands the attention of millions. We've all witnessed this disturbing pattern. The world seems filled with mediocre minds in positions of extraordinary influence, while brilliant thinkers struggle in obscurity. But what if this isn't just bad luck? What if it's not a glitch in the system, but the system itself? What if our world is actually designed to reward not the most intelligent, but the most cunning, not the wisest, but the most skilled at appearing smart without doing the work of thinking? This unsettling pattern has repeated throughout history, and one philosopher saw it more clearly than anyone else. Arthur Schopenhauer, the great 19th century thinker, uncovered one of the most uncomfortable truths about human society. Intelligence itself can be a burden in a world that rewards appearance over substance. While we're taught to believe that merit, talent, and intellectual depth will lead to success, Schopenhauer observed a darker reality, one where limited minds often triumph precisely because of their limitations, not despite them. We want to believe we live in a meritocracy where the best minds rise to the top, where wisdom is recognized and rewarded. But history, business, politics, and everyday experience tell a different story. The world doesn't operate on fairness or intellectual merit. It often favors those who understand how to appear intelligent without the burden of actual depth. Success isn't always about being the smartest person in the room. Sometimes it's about being the most convinced that you are. To understand this paradox, why fools so often succeed where geniuses fail, we need to step into Schopenhauer's philosophical framework and confront one of the most unsettling truths about how our world really works. Arthur Schopenhauer wasn't just any philosopher. Born in 1788 in what is now Poland, he developed a uniquely pessimistic worldview that ran counter to the optimistic idealism of his time. While his contemporaries like Hegel received immediate acclaim, Schopenhauer's work was largely ignored during his lifetime, giving him a first-hand experience of the dynamic he described, the struggle of genuine insight to gain recognition in a world that prefers comfortable illusions. Schopenhauer lived during a period of immense social and intellectual change. The Enlightenment had promised that reason would lead humanity to progress, but Schopenhauer saw through this naive optimism. Instead, he observed how society actually functioned, not as a meritocracy of ideas, but as a battleground where perception often defeated substance. His masterwork, The World as Will and Representation, published in 1818, presented a vision of reality that acknowledged the irrational forces driving human behavior. Unlike other philosophers who celebrated human rationality, Schopenhauer recognized that humans are driven primarily by will, our fundamental desires and impulses, while our intellect merely serves as a tool to help satisfy these deeper drives. This perspective gave Schopenhauer a unique vantage point from which to observe the social dynamics around him. He wasn't just theorizing about intelligence from an ivory tower. He was watching how intelligence functioned, or failed to function, in the real world. His outsider status allowed him to see what others missed, that the relationship between intelligence and success was far more complicated and far darker than most people realized. What makes Schopenhauer's insights so striking is how perfectly they apply to our modern world. Despite nearly 2 centuries of supposed progress, the dynamics he identified haven't disappeared. They've intensified. From corporate boardrooms to social media, we continue to see the pattern he described. The triumph of appearance over substance, confidence over competence, simplicity over depth. At the heart of Schopenhauer's philosophy is a profound understanding of the nature of intelligence and its place in human society. Unlike many philosophers who treated intelligence as an unalloyed good, Schopenhauer recognized its double-edged nature. In his work, Schopenhauer distinguishes between different types of minds. There are those possessed of genuine intellectual depth, capable of original thought, nuanced understanding, and seeing beyond immediate appearances. Then there are what he termed the common minds, those of limited intellectual capacity who operate within the boundaries of conventional thinking. The key insight Schopenhauer offers isn't just that these differences exist, but that the limitations of the common mind often function as advantages in social competition. While the truly intelligent person sees complexity, nuance, and the many sides of an issue, the person of limited intellect sees simplicity, certainty, and a straight path forward. In The World as Will and Representation, Schopenhauer explores the distinction between appearance and reality that lies at the heart of this dynamic. We live in a world of appearances, what he called representation, while the underlying reality, the thing in itself, remains hidden from direct experience. This philosophical framework extends to social interaction. Those who master the realm of appearances often succeed regardless of their grasp on deeper reality. Schopenhauer observed that most people aren't actually interested in truth or depth. They prefer simple explanations that confirm their existing beliefs and make them feel good. As he wrote, "The discovery of truth is prevented most effectively, not by the false appearance things present and which mislead into error, not directly by weakness of the reasoning powers, but by preconceived opinion, by prejudice." The will, our fundamental driving force, doesn't primarily seek truth. It seeks satisfaction, comfort, and the fulfillment of desires. Intelligence that serves these ends is valued. Intelligence that challenges them is not. This explains why simplified, comforting falsehoods often triumph over complex, uncomfortable truths. For Schopenhauer, genuine intelligence involves seeing through illusions, including social illusions. But this very ability can prevent the intelligent person from playing the social game effectively. They see the emptiness of the rituals, the hollowness of the rhetoric, the falseness of the performances that constitute so much of social life. And this seeing through can make it difficult to participate with the necessary conviction. The person of limited intellectual capacity, by contrast, takes the game at face value. They don't see behind the curtain, and this blindness becomes their strength. They can play the social game with complete conviction, precisely because they don't recognize it as a game. This brings us to the heart of Schopenhauer's insight: the psychological advantages that come with limited intellectual capacity. These aren't just abstract philosophical points. They're practical advantages that play out in workplaces, politics, and social settings every day. First, there's the freedom from doubt and hesitation. The less intelligent person isn't plagued by seeing multiple sides of an issue. They don't get lost in nuance or trapped in analysis paralysis. They see one clear path and pursue it with conviction. This decisiveness often reads as leadership and commands respect from others. As Schopenhauer observed, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. The problem is that hitting visible targets gets immediate recognition, while hitting invisible ones often goes unnoticed. Second, there's the advantage of unearned confidence. Studies in social psychology have consistently shown that confidence is more persuasive than actual competence. The Dunning-Kruger effect demonstrates that people with lower ability often have higher confidence precisely because they lack the self-awareness to recognize their limitations. Meanwhile, more intelligent people often suffer from imposter syndrome, questioning their abilities despite their competence. Third, there's the ability to communicate simply. Those with limited intellectual capacity naturally express ideas in ways that are accessible to the average person. They don't have to translate complex thoughts into simpler language because they already think in terms the majority can understand. Their natural frequency matches the receiver. Fourth, there's the blessing of obliviousness to criticism. Less intelligent people often don't recognize subtle criticism or understand the full implications of negative feedback. This shield of incomprehension protects their confidence from being eroded by the opinions of others. They simply don't process information that might damage their self-image. Fifth, there's the advantage of mental stamina. Thinking is actually hard work that consumes significant energy. Those who think less have more mental energy for other pursuits, like self-promotion, networking, and political maneuvering. While the intelligent person is mentally exhausted from deep analysis, the less intelligent person is fresh for the social competition. Schopenhauer understood these dynamics. If we were not all so interested in ourselves, life would be so uninteresting that none of us would be able to endure it. The person of limited intellect is more focused on themselves and their immediate desires, less distracted by abstract problems or the concerns of others. This self-focus creates a forceful pursuit of personal goals that can appear as drive and ambition. These aren't just theoretical observations. We see them play out in every domain of life, from office politics to national leadership. The loud, confident voice often drowns out the thoughtful, nuanced one. The simple slogan defeats the complex analysis. The bold, decisive action overshadows the careful consideration of consequences. If there are social advantages to having a more limited intellect, there are corresponding burdens that come with higher intelligence. These burdens help explain the painful pattern Schopenhauer observed: the struggle of genuinely intelligent people to achieve the recognition and success their abilities might seem to warrant. Perhaps the most significant burden is overthinking. The intelligent mind sees more possibilities, more angles, more potential problems and pitfalls. This awareness creates hesitation. While others leap forward, the intelligent person is still weighing options, considering implications, and analyzing potential outcomes. By the time they're ready to act, opportunities may have passed. As Schopenhauer noted, life is a constant process of dying. The intelligent person is more aware of this reality, more conscious of time passing, opportunities fading, and the ultimate futility of many endeavors. This awareness can create a paralyzing sense of the stakes of each decision. The burden of awareness extends to social dynamics as well. Highly intelligent people often see through social performances, recognize manipulation, and detect the gap between what people say and what they mean. This awareness makes it difficult to participate in social rituals with the necessary conviction. They become too self-conscious, too aware of the game being played to play it effectively. Another burden is the curse of high standards. Intelligent people typically hold themselves and others to more demanding standards. They notice flaws, inconsistencies, and weaknesses that others miss. This critical faculty makes it difficult to be satisfied with their own work, or to enthusiastically endorse the half-baked ideas of others. While the person of average intellect can happily promote mediocre work, the intelligent person is often paralyzed by their awareness of how much better things could be. The intelligent also suffer from the burden of complexity. Where others see simple solutions, they see complications, unintended consequences, and the limitations of proposed approaches. This awareness makes it difficult to advocate for ideas with the kind of simple certainty that resonates with most people. Their qualifications and caveats undermine the persuasive power of their arguments. Perhaps most painfully, intelligent people often struggle with the burden of isolation. Their way of thinking can make it difficult to connect with others who don't share their depth of understanding. They may find everyday conversations unsatisfying, popular entertainment shallow, and common concerns trivial. This creates a profound loneliness that Schopenhauer himself experienced. As he wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." The very faculty that allows deep understanding can prevent simple connection. The intelligent person may find themselves respected but not liked, admired but not included, valued for their contributions but not chosen for leadership. These burdens help explain the paradoxical struggle of intelligence in social competition. the very qualities that define higher intelligence: awareness of complexity, capacity for critical thinking, high standards, and depth of understanding, can become obstacles to the kind of success that depends on social perception. But if intelligence itself can be a burden, what specific strategies do less intellectually gifted individuals employ to succeed? Schopenhauer's observations, combined with modern research in psychology and sociology, reveal a playbook that works with remarkable consistency. First, they speak with absolute certainty. Research in persuasion psychology consistently shows that confident delivery is more convincing than the actual content of a message. The person who speaks without hesitation, qualification, or doubt creates an impression of authority regardless of the substance of their words. We see this in political discourse, where nuanced policy analysis loses to simple, confident assertions. We see it in business, where the decisive pitch wins over the thoughtful analysis. The person saying, "I'm absolutely certain this will work," usually persuades more people than the person saying, "Based on my analysis, this has a 70% chance of success with the following potential complications." Second, less intelligent but successful people master the art of simplification. They reduce complex issues to simple narratives with clear villains and heroes, problems and solutions. This simplification is often intellectually dishonest, but it's socially effective because most people lack the time, interest, or ability to engage with complexity. As H.L. Mencken observed, "For every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. But simple, wrong answers are often more appealing than complex, accurate ones. The person who offers an easy solution appears more competent than the person who acknowledges the difficulty of the problem." Third, they excel at reading the room rather than understanding the facts. Less intellectual people often have strong social intelligence that compensates for their analytical limitations. They focus on what people want to hear rather than what's true. They sense the mood and adjust their message accordingly. In meetings, they don't necessarily offer the best ideas, but they offer ideas at the right moment, presented in a way that connects with the concerns of decision-makers. They understand that the reception of an idea often depends more on timing, framing, and alignment with existing priorities than on the inherent quality of the idea itself. Fourth, they use confident body language and vocal delivery. Research in communication shows that the majority of our impression of others comes from nonverbal cues. The less intelligent but successful person masters these nonverbal signals of competence. The firm handshake, the steady gaze, the authoritative posture, the unwavering voice. Fifth, they excel at taking credit and deflecting blame. Studies in organizational psychology show that perception of contribution often matters more than actual contribution. The successful fool ensures their successes are visible and their failures are attributed to circumstances or others. They master the art of being present and vocal when things go well, while creating distance from negative outcomes. Sixth, they rely heavily on social proof and credentials rather than demonstrating actual understanding. They drop names, mention their connections, and prominently display their credentials. They understand that most people use these shortcuts to assess competence rather than directly evaluating someone's thinking. Seventh, they leverage the halo effect by excelling in visible areas while neglecting less visible ones. Research shows that excellence in one visible domain creates a perception of general competence. The mediocre thinker who dresses impeccably, speaks well, and maintains a perfect LinkedIn profile often appears more competent than the brilliant thinker who neglects these superficial aspects. These strategies work because they exploit the way most people make judgments about others. We don't directly observe intelligence, we infer it from signals that can be manipulated. We're influenced by confidence, simplicity, social proof, and presentation in ways we don't like to admit. And those with limited intellectual capacity are often better at manipulating these signals precisely because they're not distracted by deeper concerns about accuracy, nuance, or truth. To truly understand this dynamic, we need to examine how it plays out across different domains. The pattern Schopenhauer identified manifests differently in business, politics, media, and academia, but the underlying mechanism remains the same. In business, we've witnessed countless cases where charismatic but intellectually limited leaders have outperformed brilliant ones. Research on CEO performance consistently shows weak correlations between conventional intelligence measures and company performance. Instead, factors like confidence, decisiveness, and simple communication often predict leadership success. Consider the case of Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes, who built a multi-billion-dollar company based on technology that didn't work. Despite lacking the technical understanding to realize why her vision was impossible, her confidence convinced sophisticated investors and board members. Her limitation, not understanding enough about blood testing to recognize the impossibility of her claims, became her strength, allowing her to pursue her goals with unwavering conviction. In politics, the triumph of simplicity over depth is even more evident. Political scientists have long observed that policy expertise rarely translates to electoral success. Instead, voters respond to simple messages, emotional appeals, and the appearance of strength and certainty. The political rise of figures with limited intellectual depth but strong communication skills is a pattern that crosses ideological lines. Complex policy knowledge often becomes a liability when it prevents politicians from offering the simple solutions voters crave. Those who acknowledge nuance and uncertainty appear weak. Those who promise simple solutions to complex problems appear strong. In media, the same pattern emerges in the success of commentators and personalities who offer simple, certain pronouncements rather than nuanced analysis. Media figures who acknowledge complexity and uncertainty don't create the same emotional response or loyalty as those who offer clear villains and heroes, simple problems and solutions. Even in academia, where we might expect pure intellectual merit to prevail, social dynamics often interfere. Studies of academic success show that self-promotion, networking, and confidence often predict career advancement more accurately than objective measures of intellectual contribution. The scholar who produces careful, qualified research may advance more slowly than the one who makes bold, attention-grabbing claims. What unites these examples is the triumph of perception over substance. In each domain, we see how limitations in intellectual depth can translate to advantages in social competition. The less burdened by awareness of complexity, the more convincingly one can play the game. To understand why our social structures systematically favor the appearance of intelligence over the real thing, we need to examine the psychological and social mechanisms at work. These aren't just random patterns, but predictable consequences of how humans think and interact. First, there's our cognitive bias toward certainty. Psychological research consistently shows that humans experience certainty as rewarding and uncertainty as threatening. Our brains literally release pleasure chemicals when we feel certain and stress chemicals when we feel uncertain. The person who offers certainty, even false certainty, provides a psychological reward that the person acknowledging complexity cannot match. Second, there's our limited cognitive bandwidth. Most people simply don't have the time, energy, or ability to deeply understand complex issues. We're cognitively overwhelmed in a world of increasing complexity, creating a market for simplifiers who can make us feel like we understand things we don't. Third, there's our reliance on heuristics, mental shortcuts, to make judgments. We assess others not through direct measurement of their intelligence, but through signals like confidence, credentials, appearance, and social proof. These signals can be manipulated more easily by those who aren't constrained by self-awareness or concern for accuracy. Fourth, there's the psychological comfort of simplicity. Complex explanations require intellectual effort and often reveal uncomfortable truths. Simple explanations require less effort and can be designed to comfort rather than challenge. In the marketplace of ideas, comfortable simplicity often outcompetes uncomfortable complexity. Fifth, there's the social reinforcement of confidence. We socially reward those who express certainty and often punish those who express doubt. The person who says, "I'm not sure, it's complicated," receives less social reinforcement than the person who says, "I'm absolutely certain." This creates a feedback loop that encourages overconfidence and discourages appropriate humility. Sixth, there's the visibility bias in how we assess outcomes. We can easily observe when confident action leads to success, but struggle to recognize disasters prevented by careful thinking. The bold fool who occasionally succeeds gets more credit than the careful thinker who prevents failures that never occur. These mechanisms don't just influence individual interactions, they shape our institutional structures. Our educational systems often reward quick answers over deep understanding. Our media environments favor simple narratives over complex analysis. Our corporate structures promote those who project confidence over those who acknowledge uncertainty. Our political systems select for those who offer simple solutions over those who acknowledge difficult trade-offs. Schopenhauer understood these dynamics at a deep level. He recognized that these weren't just incidental features of society, but fundamental aspects of human psychology. Our preference for certainty over truth, simplicity over complexity, and confidence over competence isn't a modern problem, but a timeless one. The historical record provides ample evidence for Schopenhauer's observations. Across different eras and societies, we see the same pattern of appearance triumphing over substance, confidence over competence, simplicity over depth. Consider the case of Socrates, perhaps history's most famous example of intelligence punished rather than rewarded. Athens, supposedly a society that valued wisdom, executed its wisest citizen precisely because his questioning threatened the confident certainty of others. Socrates' fate illustrates Schopenhauer's point perfectly. Genuine intelligence that challenges comfortable illusions is often seen as threatening rather than valuable. Throughout history, we find court jesters gaining more influence than wise counselors, charismatic charlatans attracting more followers than thoughtful teachers, and confident fools rising to positions of authority while thoughtful voices are sidelined. This isn't a modern problem, but a recurring pattern of human society. Modern research in cognitive psychology and decision science has consistently validated Schopenhauer's insights. Studies on the Dunning-Kruger effect show that those with limited ability often have the highest confidence, while the most competent are often plagued by doubt. Research on decision-making demonstrates that decisive action is rewarded even when deliberation would produce better outcomes. Studies on persuasion confirm that confidence is more convincing than accuracy. Schopenhauer wasn't alone in noticing these patterns. Other philosophers like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard observed similar dynamics. Nietzsche noted that madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule. Recognizing how social dynamics can elevate foolishness over wisdom. Kierkegaard observed that people demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use, highlighting how we often prefer the appearance of intelligence to its substance. What's particularly striking is how technological change has amplified rather than diminished these dynamics. The information age hasn't produced an automatic triumph of substance over style. Instead, it has created more sophisticated ways for appearance to masquerade as substance. Social media rewards confident pronouncements over careful analysis. Online discourse favors quick, certain responses over thoughtful consideration. The acceleration of information flow has reduced attention spans and increased the premium on simplicity. In many ways, our modern information environment has intensified the advantage of the confident fool over the thoughtful genius. We've created tools that amplify the very dynamics Schopenhauer identified nearly 2 centuries ago. Despite this seemingly bleak picture, there are domains and circumstances where genuine intelligence does prevail. Understanding these exceptions is crucial for both navigating our world and potentially changing it. First, there are fields where outcomes are objectively measurable and directly tied to decision quality. In these domains, the advantages of appearing intelligent eventually collapse under the weight of actual results. Fields like mathematics, engineering, scientific research, and certain types of technical problem-solving create environments where substance eventually trumps style. Second, there are long-term contexts where initial impressions give way to demonstrated performance. While the confident fool may win the job interview, their limitations eventually become apparent through sustained interaction. Organizations with effective feedback mechanisms and long-term perspectives often correct initial misjudgments over time. Third, there are crisis situations where reality imposes harsh constraints on wishful thinking. When facing genuine emergencies, whether medical, technical, or strategic, groups often turn to those with demonstrated ability rather than those who merely project confidence. When the stakes are visibly high and the consequences immediate, substance tends to matter more than appearance. Fourth, there are communities of practice with shared knowledge and standards that allow more accurate evaluation of contributions. Expert communities can often distinguish genuine insight from confident nonsense in ways that general audiences cannot. These communities create spaces where intellectual merit receives more accurate recognition. Schopenhauer himself exemplifies the potential for vindication over time. Though largely ignored during his lifetime, his work eventually gained recognition as one of the most significant contributions to Western philosophy. Time often separates genuine intellectual contribution from momentary social success, even if this justice comes too late for the contributor to enjoy. These exceptions suggest that while the dynamics Schopenhauer identified are powerful, they're not inevitable. They can be mitigated through institutional design, cultural practices, and individual awareness. The challenge is creating more contexts where genuine intelligence is accurately recognized and rewarded. For the intelligent person, navigating a world that often rewards appearance over substance, Schopenhauer's insights offer both a warning and a guide. They suggest practical strategies for balancing intellectual integrity with social effectiveness. First, learn to simplify without falsifying. The ability to translate complex ideas into accessible language isn't just a social skill, it's an intellectual virtue. Einstein reportedly said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." Simplification that preserves essential truth serves both social effectiveness and intellectual integrity. Second, balance contemplation with action. While the intelligent mind naturally gravitates toward analysis and consideration, effectiveness in the world requires timely decision and action. Developing the judgment to know when enough thinking has been done, when diminishing returns have set in for additional analysis, is a crucial skill for translating intelligence into impact. Third, develop the social skills that complement intellectual abilities. Emotional intelligence, communication skills, and strategic self-presentation aren't replacements for substantive thinking, but necessary tools for ensuring that this thinking has influence. The most effective intelligent people combine depth of understanding with skillful navigation of social dynamics. Fourth, find domains where depth is valued. Not all fields and organizations are equally hospitable to genuine intelligence. Seeking environments where longer time horizons, objective measures, and substantive expertise are valued can reduce the friction between intellectual integrity and social success. Fifth, build resilience against the frustration of watching less capable people succeed. This requires both psychological acceptance and strategic patience. Understanding the dynamics Schopenhauer identified can help reduce personal distress when witnessing the success of confident fools. Recognizing that time often corrects initial misjudgments can encourage strategic patience. Sixth, maintain intellectual honesty while developing strategic awareness. This means seeing clearly both the reality of how the world works and the reality of how it should work. It means acknowledging social dynamics without being cynically consumed by them. It means playing the game effectively without forgetting that it is, in many ways, a game. Schopenhauer himself embodied some of these strategies. Despite his frustration with the social dynamics he observed, he continued to produce work of extraordinary intellectual integrity. He simplified his ideas enough to be accessible without sacrificing their essential truth. He found domains, particularly his writing, where his intellectual gifts could find expression. And while he never achieved the social recognition he deserved during his lifetime, his work ultimately found its audience. The dynamics Schopenhauer identified don't just affect individual careers. They shape the course of societies and civilizations. When appearance consistently triumphs over substance, when confidence is rewarded more than competence, when simplistic answers displace nuanced understanding, the costs extend far beyond individual injustice. Organizations make poor decisions when they elevate the confident over the competent. Political systems implement ineffective or harmful policies when they select leaders based on the appearance of wisdom rather than its substance. Media environments spread misinformation when they amplify confident voices regardless of their accuracy. Educational systems fail to develop genuine understanding when they reward performance over learning. At a civilizational level, these dynamics can lead to what we might call illusory progress, the appearance of advancement without its substance. Societies pursue technologies without understanding their implications, implement policies without grasping their consequences, and celebrate achievements without recognizing their limitations. This raises profound ethical questions about our individual and collective responsibilities. Do the intelligent have a special obligation to ensure their insights have influence despite the social dynamics working against them? Do institutions have a responsibility to design structures that more accurately identify and reward genuine intellectual contribution? Do we collectively have an obligation to create cultural practices that value substance over style, accuracy over certainty, depth over simplicity? Schopenhauer's own ethical framework, centered on compassion rather than conventional morality, suggests a perspective. He saw compassion, the direct recognition of others' suffering as our own, as the foundation of ethics. From this view, the triumph of foolishness over wisdom isn't just intellectually frustrating, it's ethically problematic because it increases suffering through poor decisions, missed opportunities, and misaligned priorities. The ethical challenge, then, is creating systems and practices that more reliably connect intelligence to influence, wisdom to power, understanding to action. This isn't just about fairness to intelligent individuals. It's about creating better outcomes for all. Schopenhauer's insights about intelligence and success point toward a more nuanced understanding of how to live well in a world that doesn't always reward merit. They suggest that we need to balance several seemingly contradictory imperatives. We need to see reality clearly without becoming cynical about it. We need to navigate social dynamics effectively without being corrupted by them. We need to simplify our communication without falsifying our understanding. We need to act with confidence while maintaining appropriate humility about what we know. This balanced approach recognizes that the dynamics Schopenhauer identified are real, but not absolute. They're powerful tendencies, not immutable laws. They can be mitigated through awareness, skill, institutional design, and cultural practice. For the intelligent person, this means developing a kind of dual consciousness, understanding both how the world works and how it could work better. It means mastering the social game enough to have influence without being mastered by it. It means finding the sweet spot between uncompromising integrity that leads to ineffectiveness and excessive compromise that leads to intellectual corruption. Schopenhauer himself eventually found a kind of resolution to this dilemma. While never achieving the recognition he deserved during his lifetime, he maintained his intellectual integrity, continued to develop his ideas, and eventually found his audience. Time vindicated his approach, even if he didn't live to see this vindication. This suggests a perspective that balances realism with hope. The dynamics that favor the confident fool over the thoughtful genius are real and powerful, but they're not the entire story. There's a countervailing force, the gradual triumph of substance over appearance, truth over convenience, depth over simplicity, that operates over longer timescales. The intelligent person's challenge is to survive and maintain integrity in the short term while positioning their contributions for vindication in the longer term. This requires both pragmatic adaptation to social realities and unwavering commitment to intellectual values. Success in this balanced approach doesn't mean achieving immediate recognition or reward. It means making contributions that matter, influencing what you can, and maintaining the integrity of your thinking in a world that often rewards its compromise. We've explored Schopenhauer's dark truth about intelligence and success, the uncomfortable reality that limited minds often triumph precisely because of their limitations, not despite them. We've examined the psychological advantages of intellectual limitation, the social mechanisms that favor appearance over substance, and the historical patterns that confirm these dynamics. But we've also discovered the counterbalancing forces, the domains where merit prevails, the long-term vindication of genuine contribution, the strategies for navigating a world that doesn't always reward depth. We've seen that while Schopenhauer's insights are valid, they're not the whole story. The ultimate wisdom may lie in holding two seemingly contradictory truths simultaneously, recognizing how the world works while not surrendering to cynicism about how it could work better. It means seeing clearly the advantages of the confident fool while not becoming one. It means acknowledging the burdens of intelligence while finding ways to bear them effectively. Schopenhauer himself embodied this balance. Despite his pessimism, he continued to write, to think, to contribute. Despite his recognition of how social dynamics favored lesser minds, he maintained his commitment to intellectual integrity. His life and work suggest a path forward, not naive optimism about merit and recognition, but clear-eyed engagement with reality that maintains both effectiveness and integrity. So perhaps the final question isn't whether intelligence is an advantage or disadvantage in our world. Perhaps it's about how we can create more contexts where its advantages are realized and its disadvantages mitigated, both in our individual lives and in our collective institutions. Perhaps it's about how we can build a world where the patterns Schopenhauer observed are exceptions rather than rules. If this message resonated with you, if you crave deeper insights into philosophy, psychology, and the hidden patterns of social success, then subscribe to the channel. Challenge yourself to look beneath the surface of conventional wisdom. Share this video with those who need to hear these uncomfortable truths. And let me know in the comments. Have you witnessed situations where appearance triumphed over substance? How did you respond? Is there wisdom in foolishness, or merely the appearance of it? Let's discuss.